like if you were going to say, okay, these are the top 3 things that men should be thinking about with their health. What top 3 things should men be thinking about, or action should they be taking in order to better their health?
Welcome to Maxed Out Man, helping you become the man you were made to be.
Hey guys, it's Kevin Davis from the Maxed Out Man podcast. I'm here with Dr. Dan Sullivan. But before we begin, don't forget to go to maxoutman.com. Check out what we've got going on there with coaches and coaching, courses, all sorts of resources over there. I do want to mention too, we're thinking about doing an adventure retreat in Costa Rica sometime in the fall of 2024, if you're listening to this. I have no plans for this whatsoever at this point, but I've mentioned it to a couple of guys and they're like, that sounds super cool. And so if you are interested in something like that, reach out to me, kd@maxoutman.com, and we'll figure it out. So, hey, I want to give Dr. Dan's bio here. So we got Dr. Dan Sullivan is a licensed naturopathic doctor and a certified health coach from the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. Dr. Sullivan has been interested in health and performance optimization from an early age in order to pursue ice hockey at a higher level, D1. He advanced in hockey and received a full scholarship from Division I University of Maine. Black Bears, go Black Bears, right? During this time, he was diagnosed with ADHD and began searching for answers other than prescription medication. Dr. Sullivan loves helping people optimize their health and has a clinical interest in mental health, brain health, hormones, performance, and biohacking. He has advanced training from Apex Energetics in thyroid, blood chemistry, brain chemistry, and functional endocrinology. There you go. Additionally, he has completed functional medicine training from the Institute for Functional Medicine and is in the process of becoming a certified practitioner. You do a lot. That's awesome. I appreciate you taking the time to be with me today. And I'm super excited. All of that stuff is like, I nerd out on
right
all
up your alley.
Yeah, so my background's in health and fitness and, you know, exercise physiology and all that stuff, but I'm not a physician. You are just like way on the other side of that continuum for me, so I'm super excited to learn from you. So that's like your LinkedIn bio, your like website bio. So fill us in on the gaps like that. How'd you get here? How'd you get interested in and why did you go the naturopathic medicine versus, traditional medicine, this functional medicine, all of that. So give me a little bit more background on that.
Yeah. I mean, I think, starting off, I was an athlete. I was a hockey player, played, many different sports growing up, golf, tennis, racquetball, baseball, you name it. But hockey kind of became my passion. That was what I wanted to do. And I wanted to play in the NHL. And so, over that journey, I was always interested in how do I get to the next level? How do I optimize my health and performance? For me back then, it was more about how do I optimize my performance on the ice? And so that just naturally led me down podcasts, books, seeking out mentorship, changing my diet, looking at websites, all that kind of stuff, just trying to devour information on how to optimize myself. And so during that process, I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was about 18, 19 years old. And I wasn't given any other options other than just pharmaceutical medication. I wasn't asked about my my diet, my stress levels, there wasn't any blood work or genetic testing that was done on me. So I didn't know any other options. And so I just started taking the medication, and that was very helpful in certain ways. My focus dramatically improved, but then I was noticing all kinds of other side effects. And so I was kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place where I really needed the medication to function well and to do well in school. I was having a terrible time focusing, a lot of brain fog. I would just read a page and just not even remember anything about what I had literally just read. And motivation levels were just very low to do anything other than what I was very interested in doing. And so, long story short, I met a mentor while I was playing hockey in college. He was an acupuncturist. He practiced functional medicine. He was just a super, super inspiring guy, very passionate about what he did. And he was like, Dan, there are other options other than medication. And the amount of sugar, the amount of processed foods that you're consuming in your diet are significantly impacting your ADHD. And so we did a number of different tests and food sensitivity testing and blood work and all this stuff to really investigate what are the root causes of my issues focusing. And so after working with him, I was able to get off of that medication. And that's sort of what lit me up in terms of, okay, there is something huge about this functional medicine world, naturopathic medicine world. And so I was on track to play professionally, but then at that point, it was sort of a critical tipping point in my career where I knew I could roll the dice and play pro, play in the minors, and hopefully keep progressing, make it to the NHL, like some of my teammates have been doing or did, which was very exciting. The thought of just playing at that level is, my dream come true. But ultimately, I knew that was going to be a massive sacrifice and a gamble as well, and it could take a long time. And if I wanted to pursue medicine, I was already 25 at the time, so I figured I would, it was pretty much now or never for me, or that's what I was thinking at the time. So then I started my journey with getting a health coaching certification, and then realizing that I wanted more tools to offer people. So my dad was actually a traditionally trained physician. So I originally explored that option. I was looking at becoming a DO, and it was actually interesting. I visited a school, and during that process, I just realized that there was a disconnect there. So in my eyes, there was. So I noticed that a lot of the students the types of foods that they were consuming was not very healthy. I noticed that they had vending machines that were, stocked full of candy and soda and things like that. And I'm like, what is happening here? There's some kind of a disconnect between the fundamentals of health, diet, being a primary driver of health, as you're well aware. Mm. And so I kind of veered away from that, and I started exploring other options. And so I had worked for that functional medicine doctor after I worked with him. I ended up working at his office and taking a low grade role there just to get my foot in the door. But during my time there, he took me to all these seminars on different, endocrinology, brain health, all these kinds of things all over the place. And I was able to meet other practitioners. And so during that time, I met other naturopathic doctors and realized what that even was. And then after talking to them and exploring that path, I decided that was the best route for me. So, well, that was a long story, but here we are.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. And I think that, I think it begs the question and maybe some definitions from you. I know that when we had kind of initially talked, we used the term naturopath in, synonymously with naturopathic doctor. So make that distinction for me. And also just define what that means. You said DO, which I know what that is, but kind of explain some of that. Cause I think there's so many medical terms and stuff that go around. And you say, oh, naturopath. If I say, hey, I go to a naturopath, they're like, oh, so you do crystals and they wave the little smoke thing around you and all, whatever that, they got the sage in the office. So just kind of walk through that. Cause I want to set some context for people on what this actually means.
Yeah. So a naturopath is not a degree per se. So you can take, an online certification. It's a much shorter process for that to be a naturopath, to basically be just educating people on their health, their diet, their lifestyle, things of that nature, but they're not actually going to medical school. So that's the distinction. So a naturopathic doctor or a naturopathic medical doctor is someone who goes to pre-med before they go to medical school. Then they go through 4 years of medical school, in which it's very similar. The first 2 years are very similar to that of a DO, which is a doctor of osteopathic medicine, or an MD, medical doctor. And so those first 2 years are very, very physiology, biology focused. We're just learning the nuts and bolts of health. We're doing cadaver lab where we're dissecting human beings. So we do all that very similar to a traditional medical school, whether that's MD or DO. MD and DO are very similar. They were much different in the past. I think they've gotten closer. So DOs will learn manipulation, physical manipulation, but a lot of the curriculum is similar to that of an MD. So before, like my dad is a DO. So back in the 70s when he was going to school, those were kind of considered the quacks and and so now they're recognized in all 50 states, very synonymous with an MD status wise. And so with an MD or naturopathic doctor, we're licensed in about half of the US right now, but about more than half of the US. So they're recognizing us. So basically, and then the other difference I should say is that the MDs and DOs go through a mandatory residency period, whereas the naturopathic doctors, unfortunately, there isn't that relationship with hospitals at this point. And so we have an optional residency where ours is more of a private practice. You go into a residency in a much smaller scale. So that's something that we're working on, that we'd really love to have that. So we are lacking that, but, and so, we can prescribe testosterone, we can prescribe hormone replacement therapy, estrogen, progesterone. We do a lot of IV therapy. We can do the schedule 3, 4, and 5 drugs. So think of the lower intervention drugs. So when you're thinking about like ADD, stimulant medications, narcotics, things like that, those are usually schedule 1 and 2, which we don't prescribe. So that's another distinction between a naturopathic doctor as well.
Okay. Yeah. And you can, put your tinfoil hat on and kind of think through why the licensing issue, why the residency issue, and why the animosity or antagonistic relationship between hospitals and NDs, right? Because it's like, well, if you guys aren't writing scripts for the expensive Schedule 1 drugs, then that hurts the bottom line. Healthcare is so crazy, especially now, and it seems like it gets worse all the time. But I think the promising thing is, as you're talking about, the less less of a dichotomy between MD and DO would hopefully mean that the MDs are getting more holistic type of education, right?
Well, and the very end of the bio that you read, the Institute for Functional Medicine, that's that big long certification process that I'm doing. A lot of MDs and DOs are in that same program. Okay. And so a lot of them have already, they're already established physicians, and then they actually want to pivot and go into more functional medicine, but they were never taught those things, which are more in alignment with what we're taught as naturopathic doctors, which I should probably mention, which is more of the diet, the lifestyle. We have a lot of, I forget how many hours, hundreds of hours of diet, nutrition, different vitamins, minerals. We learn a lot about just holistic medicine, how to get better, how to feel better on a root cause level. And we still, granted, we still have pharmacology classes where we learn medications, right? I got my DEA license, which required me to pass a huge exam based around just purely medications. And so there's kind of that we learn enough of the conventional to understand that, because we really have to understand that, right? Because I forget how many medications the average American is on, but it's a fair amount. And so we have to kind of know what we're doing in terms of how do we help them? How do we work with their prescribing doctor? How do we wean them down, if possible, some of those medications, and intervene with the lifestyle, the more natural therapeutics?
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast this morning, Robert and Charla Shaw, who have a Mastering Your Marriage podcast, which is awesome, by the way. But they had a doctor, and they were talking about, my wife and I were listening to it because she's 50. She's kind of in that perimenopause stage. And the podcast, this particular one, was about HRT and about the kind of the fears behind it and all the symptoms of perimenopause. And I mean, I realize this is a man's podcast, but if your wife or significant other is going through any of this stuff, but all that to say, she was talking a lot about functional medicine, and she was also talking about, the whole lifestyle thing. Like you can control some things with diet, nutrition, exercise, all of these things. But in this case, they were talking about estrogen and progesterone production. And like, once your body's not producing those anymore, you can't you have to go a pharmacological route. It was her stance. Because you just don't have that. You have to go a replacement route because you just don't have it. And so that's where like what you guys do versus is important, because there are just times when taking a pharmacological approach is the approach, right? Or at least a component of it, right?
100%. Yeah, and there's also ways too. It's like, how do you marry the pharmaceutical with the stress reduction, the dietary changes, the targeted supplementation, the labs, right? The comprehensive lab work that really fine tunes the HRT, right? Because there's a lot of other things that affect hormone metabolism, how well the hormones are binding at the receptor, especially like in men, and testosterone. A lot of guys will just want to go on TRT, but if they're a little bit overweight, they've got that central adiposity, that midsection weight, they're going to aromatize that testosterone into estrogen.
Yeah.
More of it, right? So they're going to convert that testosterone into estrogen. So there's a lot of other supportive factors to adding in a pharmaceutical that we would try to optimize to get the best bang for your buck out of that pharmaceutical.
Yeah, because I mean, sometimes it's just part of the and that's what I want to define what holistic medicine is, and just the holistic approach. Because in some cases, when I used to hear words like holistic, right? Again, it's like, oh, we got this shaman and he's sitting in a yoga pose and all that. Holistic just means whole body, right? Like everything fits together. A good buddy of mine, Justin Rotzlingshofer, who actually was a NHL strength and conditioning coach.
Nice.
He's very much about the whole self. And I've learned a lot from him because I'm a go, lift weights 6 days a week, and like he starts looking at HRV and some of these numbers and my sleep quality. He's like, dude, you're going to die early. You're going to look great, but you're going to die early because you're not taking a holistic approach to your health. Right. And then that's something we're missing in modern medicine and just everyday, especially Western life. Right.
For sure. Yeah. We have those blind spots too. And I feel like a comprehensive approach, it's just, in my eyes, holistic is just comprehensive view. And so, for instance, what I'll do is I'll do a 90-minute initial exam or initial intake with somebody that comes in. Every new patient is seen for an hour and a half by me.
Wait, you're only supposed to get like 7 minutes. I thought 7 minutes was the limit. I know. So yeah, that's inherently an issue, right? With our current medical system and the insurance model, it just doesn't
that doesn't fit the model. And so it's unfortunate for people that aren't getting the type of care that they deserve. I feel like everybody deserves to have a comprehensive look at their body, their physiology, to understand what's going on, because we know so much about the body and how to optimize. Obviously, there's so much more to learn, which is always exciting. But I feel like that's why we do that, is to really literally go ask them questions from birth, right? Were they breastfed? Were they CCC baby? For, did they get chronic ear infections or sinus infections? Were they put on chronic antibiotics as a child? What is their gut microbiome like? Because that is the house of 80% of the immune system. And a lot of times, I would say probably 80% of patients plus that I see do have some level of gut dysfunction going on. And so the more I do this, the more I test for that. And a lot of people have never had their full gut tested. Yep. And that plays a significant role in their hormones and how their physique looks. How are they absorbing their pristine diets, with all the macros getting perfectly calculated, all that stuff. So it's just a deeper look. And I think that's what I really learned from my original mentor, Jay, the functional medicine provider that helped me make the transition. He was just like, man, there's so much more for you to learn. And there's just deeper and deeper levels of knowledge and how this stuff all works to optimize at just a massive level than where you're currently at. And so just to finish that thought, I think that we call that the subjective, right? What the person is telling us, combine that with a comprehensive objective. So drawing the blood, looking at their comprehensive blood work, their vitamin D and their testosterone. They're not only the total testosterone, granted, but the free testosterone, the sex hormone binding globulin, the estradiol, the ratio of testosterone to estrogen, all these different markers. Talking more men there, obviously, and then as well is the lipid panels. This is a huge issue that's coming up a lot, and where they'll go to their primary care and they'll get total cholesterol, LDL, HDL, and triglycerides. That's it. And that stuff may look normal or okay, but they're literally a ticking time bomb when we do a very advanced cardiovascular panel on people that it would be indicated on, or they're interested in doing that. A lot of times the breakdown of the more advanced lipid markers is very telling. And so they can get away with a seemingly clean bill of health by just looking at surface level data. But when they dig a little deeper, then they realize, oh, there's some stuff going on. And then, it's very empowering too, because we can connect the dots and say, oh, you've got your inflammation going on here. You've got your vitamin D's low. You've got, your iron status is suboptimal, all this stuff, and how that interplays with the thyroid, which is affecting your gut motility, which is then affecting your brain function and your brain fog. People have never had all those dots connected before. So that's really a fun part of my job. And it's really just exciting to see them buy in. They're like, oh, wow, all this stuff is it's all connected, and I can, do something about it and feel better.
Yeah. And to realize that, doctors don't ask about lifestyle ever. I don't go to the doctor very much because I'm healthy, but, they don't ask about diet. They don't ask about your nutrition, in general. They don't ask about, do you work out? Do you lift weights? Do you exercise? Do you have strong family connections? Do you, all of these things, all they do are oh, your triglycerides are too high. Let me throw you on this statin, which by the way is going to kill you, which is like a terror. It's just, and so that 90 minutes is so crucial for people in order to get that, because you may see all these data. And like you said, I love you become more of a behavioral specialist, coupled with data.
True.
Right?
Very true. Yeah, I'm definitely running into that a lot more. That approach of, okay, because a lot of this stuff is they have to do something about it. They have to change their lifestyle, their relationships, whatever the root cause. We investigate what is causing the issue here. Is the limiting factor the relationship or the lack thereof with your dad or with, whatever the case may be? Or is it the mold toxicity that you have, right? Is it a physiological reason or some combination, usually some combination of 5 to 7 factors for most people. And so, yeah, it's just it becomes an art, and I'm spending more time learning about what motivates people, what inspires people. It's one thing to look at the data and give them a treatment plan. I feel like that's easier, so to speak, than it is to, okay, where is this person at in their life? How are they financially? What kind of a time commitment do they have? How motivated are they? How can I inspire and motivate them? And then what order of operations would be most effective? Where do we start to get the most meaningful, quick change for them to feel better as soon as possible? And then to, have that motivation and that, what's that word I'm looking for? The
compliance.
Oh gosh. That's going to kill me, man. That continued, that motivation, the kind of getting the ball rolling in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah. So are you doing like parallel paths almost, because you could say, okay, well, I know that you need to stop eating at McDonald's 6 days a week. I know that you need to actually lift weights. I know that you need to do all these things, but if I just have you do those, that may take you 6, 9, 12 months, you're going to see benefits within 6 weeks, 6 to 12 weeks, obviously by just doing some of those things. But then you're taking, whether it's supplementation, whatever that other path. So are you taking more of a parallel path to do both of those things at the same time?
Yes. So that's sort of where the art comes in. And also that what just came to mind is the pharmaceuticals too, the higher level intervention for some people to kind of just get a kickstart too. So I will do that when it's indicated, when I think that would make a really big difference for that person and just help to get them on board. So yeah, there's a time and a place for that. I think for a lot of people though, it is very motivating once they see the data that they've never really seen before laid out like that. That is really motivating. And for men too, where a lot of men are data driven and gosh, it's crazy what comes up, and seemingly like I just had a guy, great guy, he's 42 years old, nice family. His wife came in, she had Hashimoto's and I'm treating her and she's like, yeah, I want to get my husband in here. And so he doesn't really have that much going on. He, feels pretty good, comes in and, he finally comes in, he's a busy guy and we get to talking, we do some labs on him. And I don't know how this guy's functioning because he had mercury levels that were through the roof. His homocysteine was like 3x the normal limit, which is a measure of inflammation in the body. Mm-hmm. He had 2 different parasitic infections in his gut. He had massive leaky gut or intestinal permeability. There was probably 10 other things going on. And I'm like, how are you doing this? And imagine how much better you can feel if we address some of this stuff. So we're doing that now. And man, I'm so excited for people like that are operating, at a certain percent, of their capacity. And it's like, oh, now, and that's what's exciting for me too, is helping people to get to from maybe 50% efficiency to 80, 90, 100%. We're capable of so much,
Oh man, it's not, at the end of the day, it's not that hard. It was funny because when I first started talking to Justin, who's the guy it's called Own It, which they do cellular testing and DNA testing and all this different stuff, and then custom supplementation. But when I first started talking to him, I had this like super cocky attitude, right? Like, oh, I'm Mr. Fit, Mr. High Performance, Mr. All whatever. But my wife is dealing with perimenopause and sleep issues and all this kind of stuff. And we get our data back, and it's like the same thing as this guy, right? Like your patient,
Yeah.
like, all right, I look great from the outside and I'm high performance, but like I don't sleep well. My HRV is in the tank. I'm just cellularly not that healthy. And so like that's where as a guy, you're like, oh, well, the data is right here. What do I need to do? And so I put in all these things in place. We have better sleep things. We have, more stress relief, which is the killer, right? Like the stress part of it, stress management, 100%. All of those things. I've been on TRT for about 3 years now. I have one testicle. So because of a motorcycle accident, so there's a physicality that affected that, but mine was like 243. In my early 40s, and so you can imagine how I felt with that. I do want to ask you about hormone regulation when it comes to TRT, estradiol, those kind of things. We at Max Out Man, I've been concentrating on the like 45 plus demographic, so that a lot of our listeners are that way. But I also want to talk to these younger guys who are in their, 18 to 25, 18 to 30. I just had a buddy of mine that's like 32, and his was like 246. His testosterone was. And so talk to me kind of how we evaluate as guys, like when should we get tested? What are our procedures? What dietary and nutrition and exercise things can we do in order to kind of address some of those symptomatic things?
So I think, number one, every man should be tested for the testosterone for sure. Have a baseline. The younger you are, the better, right? In your 20s, I would start there just so you have a baseline. This is where I was at in my 20s, and then you can kind of track that over time. I would also encourage guys to get a full panel in terms of, so not just the total testosterone, but also looking at free testosterone, looking at sex hormone binding globulin, looking at estradiol, looking at DHEAS. I mean, really I'd encourage people to get as comprehensive a panel as possible, whatever they can afford. And if you're going through your primary care, you really have to, in most cases, advocate for yourself. So looking up a full panel, getting knowledgeable on what that looks like, and then presenting that to the doctor and just asking for all those labs and seeing what they'll do. So I'd recommend doing that.
And you can go to an external lab too, right? Like that's what I do. And they even have, so like they at my thing, they have, they'll do the full testosterone panel that you described, and it's half price on Tuesday and Thursdays. I don't know why they do that, but like you can go to an external lab, and then I present that to my, ND, and I'm like, all right, here's my labs. This is what I've been on. This is what I think I should do. Do you have any, disagreements or whatever? But, to your point, go get tested. Keep going.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a great point, because that's becoming more and more, financially doable for people too, because that would be an out-of-pocket expense. But yeah, it's becoming more and more reasonable to get comprehensive labs done. In terms of, what were you asking about, the diet and the exercise? Just
like steps like you could take, how do you evaluate whether or not everybody should get tested, right? But what's the motivation to get tested? Like symptomatically, what things do you look with your diet and exercise and all that too?
So I think everybody should get tested, because even if you feel like you're feeling okay, you want to get some data to evaluate that, to kind of combine how you're feeling with how you're doing objectively. And so you can feel okay with a testosterone of 350, maybe you can, because that's kind of your norm, right? And so you wouldn't know that until you get the, until you get that.
I did air quotes if you're listening to this, norm.
The norm. Yeah, that's a whole nother topic. But so yeah, I think symptom wise, it's just inability of gaining muscle in the gym. It's a lack of motivation. It's, are you not getting erections in the morning when you're waking up, or throughout the night? But you wouldn't really know that. Just general kind of malaise. Also, body composition as well can suffer. So just not being able to gain muscle or be even motivated to get to the gym to put on the muscle in the first place. Also, with focused motivation, right, testosterone plays a significant role in the frontal lobe of the brain, where we make a lot of executive decisions. And so it's a big problem if people have low testosterone, right? That's a risk factor for cardiovascular disease when they have low T. And so that's a huge problem. So I want to just encourage men that it's okay to seek out, TRT, or to, want to optimize, basically just want to optimize their testosterone, right? Mm-hmm. Try to do it naturally if at all possible, and try to exhaust those options, because that's the other thing too that I'll just mention before I get into diet and exercise, is that the testosterone, if you are to do testosterone replacement therapy and you haven't addressed the fundamentals first, you're not going to get that good of results with it. You're going to, potentially aromatize it into estrogen. You're going to have to be put on higher dosages of something like a anastrozole to inhibit the conversion. And you're kind of playing whack-a-mole with right. These other side effects that happen, like the acne that'll come up because you're going to have to take higher and higher dosages, because if you're more inflamed, the testosterone won't bind as effectively at the receptor. So there's all these other things that are playing a role in how effective the testosterone is. So I'd also encourage men, because I know it's tempting to just say, oh, yeah, I got low testosterone, I just want to, get my levels up as soon as possible. But it's worth the work and effort that it takes to set the stage right. And then after that's done, if you still truly need TRT, then by all means do it. But then you're just in a place where the TRT is just going to supercharge you instead of this weird place where you're getting all these side effects and stuff. And it's not really, you get the honeymoon and it'll just kind of decrease after a couple months. So I just wanted to go on a little rant there.
No, that's super helpful, because I actually haven't heard anybody talk about TRT in the, because it's not a magic bullet, right? Just like steroids are not a magic bullet. The guys that are doing steroids, which is like 10 times what I take, those guys are still working their ass off in the gym. Like, it's not a magic, 100%. It's not magic serum, like you're a superhero. But I love that you talked about the fact that, I know guys that are on TRT and they're still 50 pounds overweight, 30 pounds overweight, because they don't exercise. Yeah. They still eat like crap. I was originally on anastrozole, and my doctor's like, you don't need that. You're low body fat. You're fine. Just don't. And I don't take it. So now I just do that. I don't worry about HCG or any of that, and atrophy, because I'm married and my wife doesn't care. And I don't really care that much either. But, but I really appreciate that component, is because it's something that comes into what you'll talk about next, which is, lifestyle stuff, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So to touch on that, I think having adequate protein is critical. So I recommend having protein with every meal. So having at least, 3 meals a day, typically. Highly variable in terms of who's a good candidate for intermittent fasting, things like that. For some people, that can be very effective. If you're very stressed already, I would not recommend intermittent fasting, just because it is another physiological stressor on the body. Mm-hmm. In terms of diet, really, you want to be consuming as low amount of sugar as possible, because higher amounts of sugar decrease the immune system, decrease testosterone, literally. I would encourage people to be consuming a lot of cruciferous vegetables, a lot of fiber, content, that fiber is very good for lowering LDL cholesterol, number one, but also just good for the gut microbiome that ferments that. Very good for the health of the gut, which highly affects your hormones like testosterone. Also, making sure you're having regular bowel movement. So the fiber will help with that, which will promote detoxification, which is also good for testosterone. Quality over quantity as well too. So making sure you're getting grass-fed beef, you're getting, organic eggs, all those kinds of things. The pesticides and residues that's on conventionally grown vegetables or fruits and meats, things like that, or not pesticides on meats, but just hormones and other things that are in conventionally grown meats are not good. And so for many reasons, I think those are some of the pillars, I would say, of supporting testosterone. There's a lot of other nuance in there, of course, but I think if you're eating mainly whole food, you're trying to stay away from the inflammatory seed oils, the fast food, obviously, the packaged foods, as much just how it comes from nature as possible, the better. And then I think in terms of exercise, I would say having regular weightlifting sessions is going to be the most important thing. Doing full body movements, complex lifts, deadlift, bench press, back squat, or if you're unable to do those things, just still getting a complex movement in, like a leg press, or a push, pull, overhead push, overhead pull, movements like that. And you're working your body I think the rep ranges too can be variable, but I like to go more on the lower side, not super low as to potentially increase risk of injury, but enough weight where you're really working, you're really stressing the muscle. Maybe 6 reps, 6 to 10, 5 to 10 to 12, somewhere in that range, I feel like is a good range for most people. And then I think not overtraining either, right? So if you're going aggressively every single day, an hour and a half in the gym, right, there's a point of diminishing return. So I feel like, to your point, we were talking about, the stress and the relaxation, that's equally as important. So hitting the gym hard and then also rejuvenating as well, because that's obviously when your body grows is out of the gym.
Yeah. We always make the distinction between overtraining and under recovered. I talked to a buddy of mine, and he was saying that it's even elite athletes have a hard time overtraining, right? Like, and it typically is, we use that phrase, and it really is under recovered, to your point that you just gave, which is just, we're not allowing our bodies to grow and to repair and to, build those things that's why we're doing everything, right? Is in order to keep that recovery and build better bodies.
100%. Yeah, I ran into that too as a hockey player. Like I was not doing a good job of recovering under a lot of stress. Yeah, I know so much better now.
It's pretty typical. Hey, I want to finish up, but can you give, we're going to say, okay, these are the top 3 things that men should be thinking about with their health. What top 3 things should men be thinking about, or action should they be taking in order to better their health?
Dang, that's a hard one.
Put you on the spot.
Yeah. I think number 1 is actually mindset. So keeping an open mind, being open to being wrong, or just, like you were saying, like you're thinking you're the healthiest guy in the room or whatever, and then you do some labs and it's like, oh, I got some work to do. So just being open to that. I feel like a lot of guys, and I run into this a lot because most of my practice is women, right? Because that's just the way it pans out. Women just are more likely to seek help and, get things checked out. And so for guys, I'd highly encourage them to keep the mindset of keeping an open mind, asking for help if you're experiencing symptoms, like the symptoms of low T or whatever, seeking help, doing it.
Getting
it's
help.
Okay.
Got it.
Getting help. And then, I think there's so much to mindset. I love that topic, but I think that's where it all starts, right? If you're not open to doing anything or open to changing, then the other two are for no.
Yeah.
I would say number 2 is having really good connections and people who are healthy that you're friends with, that you spend time with, because we that's like the biggest indicator, more than me telling you to eat whole foods and everything, which is, I think, very important, obviously. But I think if you're around that environment on a daily basis, it becomes very hard to deviate from that and become unhealthy if everybody else around you is healthy.
Right. Yep.
So I think that would be, do your best to, be around people like that and create friendships. If you don't have any like that already, that's very, very important to do that. Or with anything else that you want to get better at. If you want to make more money, spend time around people who make more money.
Right.
Things like that.
Right.
And then I think number 3 would be just, from a biased standpoint, I think getting tested, getting comprehensive blood work as a baseline to just see where things are at and then go from there. Because honestly, you don't know till you know, and you feel, but it's another thing to really get a comprehensive look. And then it's super empowering too, because you see the data, you see the before, and then you take action, you take certain supplements, you change your diet or you change your relationships, and then you retest and you see what happened. It's just like an N of 1 experiment.
Yeah, 100%.
And 9 times out of 10, you're going to be feeling significantly better in the process.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Hey, Dr. Dan Sullivan, how do we find you? How do we get more information about you, learn more about what you do, and kind of reach out if we need help or information?
Yeah, so I'm mostly on Instagram. dr.dansullivan is my handle. Oasis Health and Medicine. So that's the clinic that I work at. So we have a clinic, me and my partner, in San Diego, California. So Oasis Health and Medicine, all spelled out, .com is our website. So we're seeing patients in person, virtually, and we're also looking to expand. So we're actively creating an online community on school right now. So
nice.
That's very exciting. So, because that's one of the things we're running into is we just don't have the time to see all these people. So, and then also, some people just cannot afford it. So we want to really make this type of medicine much more available, as available as possible. So
yeah,
look out for
I love
too.
it. Hey, I may reach out to you about my wife too, with her HRT, and talk a little bit about that. So, hey, thank you so much for coming on board. Super interesting. We'll have to bring you back and talk more about mindset. I love that topic as well. So I'd love to have you back at some point, but thanks so much for coming on board, man. Have a great day.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Likewise.
If you're looking to really maximize your life and become the man you were made to be, head over to maxedoutman.com and get your journey started today.